Super producers have just told me that Premier Marshmallow has just put out the big thank you video. So he's sort of going for the donut thing. He was going for it to be the social media star. Show that video in a moment or two's time instead. We thought of talking to Catherine McGregor about the most serious issues today, that being the war crimes allegations against Australian soldiers, about what we need to learn, what is also an overreaction here. I'm not talking about to this point, but what could be an overreaction in some of those that are going to want to really dent the Defence Force. We'll talk about that with her a little later. But in the meantime, we're here with Bridget McKenzie, of course, National Senator in Victoria, and even though she gets the ability to cross into Albury anytime she wants, she still has to sit in a 40-minute queue to do so. No one's got virus on either side of the queue, but there she is. She waits till Monday to be able to freely move about. Chris Kenny, I think by once, are you out of hotel quarantine this weekend?
I got 2 more sleeps here. I've been tested 3 times, COVID negative, but I got 2 more sleeps before I can see my children and lovely wife before sunrise on Saturday, hopefully.
Now, you know that when you get home, no complaining about being tired. You have to do all of the chores that you put off for about 6 weeks, mate. You've got to rebuild the cubby house. If I hear you going to bed before midnight when you get home, on Selena's behalf...
Could you have a word to Mark Calvin and Paul Whittaker at Sky first? Because I've constructed this studio, I'm doing 2 midnight a day, I'm writing for the Oz, and all I've done so far is ring me up about an additional project.
I will have a good word. And of course, the karaoke champ, as always on these nights, is none other than Bronwyn Bishop. Now, Bronwyn, the same play, the same group, the same game that was played about getting rid of Tony Abbott in Warringah, now being played to get rid of Craig Kelly out of the federal parliament as well. And it starts with grassroots organisations that are basically trying to click and drag the Wentworth play, which worked, of course, at Warringah. They're trying to pull it over. They get their mates in the Turnbull Times or their bandana buddies at the Southern Herald to leak out about how inevitable it is that these people are grassroots and want to get rid of the current MP. But here's what Craig Kelly had to say about those that are hunting for him.
It suddenly makes me want to double down, and I'm going to come after every one of these people because they are frauds. They are ripping off Australian families, they are sending Australian jobs offshore, and they are selling this nation out to the UN and all these bureaucrats. And I'm not going to stand for them, and they can make whatever threats that they like, but I am coming after them, Alan. I'm not going to put up with this, and I said, whatever threats they are, I'm only going to double down.
Are they going to get him, though, Robin?
Well, let's understand that this isn't the first time. They went after him last time for his press election. There was a manoeuvre by the left wing of the party. They call themselves moderate, and that's because they're moderately intelligent, moderately loyal, moderately sensible, and they went after Craig on that occasion. He survived. So the next time, they're going to have a grassroots movement. Now, I understand they've got a preferred candidate. You've got in Matt Keane, someone who really is just so strange in his attitude in the Liberal Party to things that really matter to our country.
And proudly moderate.
Well, moderately proud, perhaps. But the serious issue is that the left in the Liberal Party are a very formidable faction.
They are.
And they are hunting for him. And they'll be behind all these little manoeuvres that are going on, and that's important that people see it for what it is. Because he was saved last time by the intervention, literally, of the Prime Minister. It would be very good to see it again.
But to see it early?
Well, depends when they go to hold the first elections.
We'll wait, we'll see. A lot of process. We talk about process. Sometimes they can glaze the eyes over, but this stuff matters. Chris, I want to talk about China because obviously by Australia getting closer to Japan, that might pisses off China for, well, not so obvious reasons, but China ain't our friend, and I think it's best for us to be getting as many other friends around the region as possible. The Prime Minister spoke to you tonight about how those who want to, trade off the displeasure of China versus Australia's national interest means that we should choose to not stand up for our national interest. Here's what the PM told you earlier tonight.
If that is the source of tension that is being raised, then these are matters that go to Australia's national sovereignty. And it's not clear to me, those who will see some improvement in the relationship with Australia, how that would be achieved and what that would mean if it would mean compromising on these clear areas of national sovereignty. And of course, we're not going to do that.
Chris, I love the steel in his spine, and I know the hits that are going to be coming his way. What do you think of what the PM told you tonight on the air?
Look, I think that's a really good position. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's Australia's interests, Australia's values. You've got to stand up for them. Now, I'll give Labor some credit here. I think federally they've been pretty good in supporting the government on this. It needs to be bipartisan. The weak link is some Labor premiers, Mark McGowan and Daniel Andrews, who want to kowtow to China too much. I mean, the point here is that China is trying to bully Australia desperately to act against our national interests, to turn on our allies. Japan is no new friend of ours. We had a strong trade links with Japan long before we did with China, and they were our number one trading partner, and they're still second or third. And what we're looking at doing is maturing that relationship into one that's a little bit more security and defence focused, and that's a good thing. It's a liberal democracy. It's also an ally of the US. It makes all kinds of sense for us, as does the building up of our trade and strategic links with India. And we're just going to keep at this and ignore China and hope that good sense comes to pass in the end. Maybe, I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden, as you know, but if he's inaugurated as president, maybe that will just create a little opportunity for a reset here. I'm worried that it will have the opposite effect, but there is a chance that if there's some sort of reset between the US and China, that Australia might draw some benefit from that.
Yeah, Catherine McGregor, we're going to talk about the war crime stuff in a second, but I just want to quickly bring you in Canberra, if we can bring her up, guys, in the studio. Just about this China stuff and about what Chris was just saying about potential resets and recalibrations. How important is the continuation of Trump to our protection or the recalibration that might come up by Biden?
Well, I think the only optimistic view to take, Paul, I think, is that the longevity of the alliance is built on, it extends beyond the personality of the incumbent. And people gloss over this, and I was heartened to hear that quote from the Prime Minister, because we've had a lot of people running around, Jeff Raby, the former ambassador, and others, self-flagellating as though this is Australia's problem, when in fact China has aggravated nearly the entire ASEAN region, most of the littoral states in the South China Sea, and people very conveniently forget that we host large joint facilities with the United States that are integral to their space and cyber warfighting capabilities. The first picture of any Chinese operation across the Straits of Taiwan or a launch of any kind of ballistic missile from China would be detected by facilities that we co-host with the United States. So we don't get to walk both sides of the street on this. And I think reset, yes, but what the PM has said and what even Simon Birmingham has said is that we can't trade at the price of being who we are. And what is being exacted from us at the moment are ultimatums that go to our very core identity. It's not about barley or wine or iron ore. Ultimately, it's an attempt to coerce us into recognising their regional hegemony, their entirely illegitimate conduct in Hong Kong, and their avarice towards in Hong Kong, and their ultimate desire to occupy Taiwan. Now, we simply can't take a walk on those things. And I think whether Joe Biden's inaugurated or not, the underlying fundamentals of our commitment to the United States and ultimately to what I think is this emerging quad with Japan and India joining us is going to be, it will define itself.
Good stuff. We'll bring back you for a chat about the ADF stuff in a second. But Bridget, just quickly before we go to a break, today the UK has announced no more petrol combustion engines, no more diesel can be sold in that country from 2030. Now, the flow-on for Australia matters because many of the cars, I think we actually drive on the similar side of the road, which means when we don't make cars here, they need other markets to purchase cars that drive the same way that we do. So if you take the UK out of that market, is Australia going to end up getting dragged to this whether we choose to be that way or not?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really legitimate question, Paul, and it's one of the reasons why our government's focusing on advanced manufacturing, because what COVID-19 and other issues have highlighted is that national sovereignty piece and the fragility of global supply chains means we need to be making more here at home. We need to make Australia make again, and whether it's cars, whether it's ag-vet chemicals, health supplies, etc. That's a serious conversation and a strategic one we need to be having. I mean, I read that, I thought, well, it's easy as a regional UK person to think that it's like you can get around your 100-acre farm without your diesel, but you cannot actually operate a header here without 20